The morning sun had barely risen over the quiet streets of Willow Creek Estates when residents noticed something that made absolutely no sense. Every luxury home on Maple Ridge Drive had received the exact same violation notice from the HOA overnight. The letters claimed each homeowner owed a special assessment fee of $25,000, effective immediately. Failure to pay within 30 days would result in liens against their properties. Neighbors poured out of their houses holding identical envelopes, staring at one another in disbelief. Some thought it was a scam, others believed it had to be a clerical mistake. But when dozens of homeowners called the HOA office, nobody answered. The office doors were locked, the lights were off, and the HOA president, Richard Langston, had seemingly vanished. Within hours, panic spread through the entire neighborhood. Families who had lived peacefully for years suddenly feared losing their homes. Retired couples were in tears. Young parents worried about their savings. Residents flooded community social media groups demanding answers. Yet the only response they received was an automated email stating that the assessment had been approved during a private emergency board meeting 3 weeks earlier. The problem was that nobody remembered such a meeting ever taking place. No notices had been sent, no announcements had been posted, no votes had been held. It was as if the decision had appeared out of thin air. One homeowner refused to accept the explanation. Her name was Emily Carter, a former investigative journalist who had moved to Willow Creek after leaving the news industry. Something about the entire situation felt wrong. The amount was too large. The secrecy was too suspicious, and the disappearance of Richard Langston was the biggest red flag of all. Emily began reviewing HOA records available online and quickly discovered something disturbing. Several financial reports had been quietly removed from the community portal only days before the assessment letters were mailed. The missing documents covered nearly 3 years of HOA spending. That night, Emily drove past the HOA office and noticed a faint light glowing through a back window. The building was supposed to be empty. Curious, she parked across the street and watched. Nearly 20 minutes later, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. 2 men stepped out carrying large cardboard boxes. They entered through the rear entrance and disappeared inside. Emily immediately started recording with her phone. After another 15 minutes, the men emerged carrying what appeared to be shredding bags filled with documents. Before she could get a clearer shot, the SUV sped away into the darkness. The next morning, Emily shared the footage with several neighbors. The video spread rapidly through the community. Residents demanded an emergency meeting and accused the HOA board of destroying evidence. Under growing pressure, Vice President Karen Mitchell finally agreed to address homeowners. More than 200 residents packed into the community clubhouse that evening. The atmosphere was explosive. People shouted questions before the meeting even started. Karen looked visibly nervous as she stepped to the podium. Then came the moment that changed everything. Karen announced that the $25,000 assessment was supposedly needed to repair severe structural damage underneath the community's private lake. According to her, engineers had discovered an imminent risk of dam failure that could flood dozens of homes. Gasps filled the room. Some residents immediately believed her, others demanded proof. When asked to present the engineering report, Karen hesitated. She shuffled through her papers, her hands trembled. Then she admitted she did not actually have the report with her. The crowd erupted. A resident stood up and revealed he worked as a civil engineer. He demanded the name of the engineering company. Karen refused to answer. Another resident asked why the community had never seen inspection notices or maintenance records. Again, Karen had no response. The meeting descended into chaos. Homeowners accused the board of fraud, corruption, and financial misconduct. Several demanded immediate resignations. Just as Karen attempted to end the meeting, the clubhouse doors suddenly swung open. Everyone turned. A man wearing a dark business suit walked into the room carrying a thick stack of documents. Nobody recognized him. Without saying a word, he walked directly to the front of the room, placed the documents on the podium, and looked straight at Karen Mitchell. Her face instantly turned pale. Then he spoke a sentence that left the entire room frozen in shock. Those funds were never for the lake. The room went silent. The stranger slowly opened the top file and revealed bank statements, property records, and financial transfers connected to the HOA. And at the center of every transaction was one name. Richard Langston. The clubhouse had become so quiet that even the sound of papers sliding across the podium seemed deafening. The mysterious man adjusted his tie and looked around the room. Every homeowner was staring at him. Karen Mitchell remained frozen in place, unable to hide the panic spreading across her face. The stranger introduced himself as Daniel Brooks, a forensic accountant hired months earlier by a former HOA board member who had become suspicious of the association's finances. According to Daniel, what he had uncovered was far worse than anyone could have imagined. One by one, Daniel projected financial records onto the large screen behind him. The documents showed millions of dollars moving through HOA accounts over several years. At first, the transactions appeared normal: landscaping contracts, maintenance expenses, security upgrades, community improvement projects. But as Daniel dug deeper, patterns began to emerge. Many of the companies receiving HOA funds existed only on paper. Their business addresses led to empty office buildings, abandoned warehouses, or residential homes. Some companies had no employees at all. Others had been created only weeks before receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars from the HOA. Then came the first major shock. Daniel revealed that one of the largest vendors paid by the HOA was a construction company called Evergreen Development Solutions. According to HOA records, the company had received nearly $4.8 million over 4 years for infrastructure repairs throughout Willow Creek Estates. But public records showed the company was secretly owned through multiple shell corporations. After tracing the ownership chain, Daniel finally reached the real beneficiary, Richard Langston. The room exploded with outrage. Homeowners shouted in disbelief. Some stood from their seats. Others demanded immediate police involvement. Karen repeatedly tried to interrupt, but Daniel continued presenting evidence. He displayed signed contracts, banking records, and corporate filings linking Richard directly to companies that had been receiving HOA funds. Every document appeared legitimate. Every transaction was carefully documented, but then Daniel dropped an even bigger bombshell. The missing money wasn't the only problem. He explained that 6 months earlier Richard Langston had secretly purchased over 50 acres of undeveloped land just outside Willow Creek Estates. The purchase price exceeded $12 million. Nobody understood why this mattered until Daniel displayed aerial photographs on the projector screen. The entire room gasped. The newly purchased land sat directly beside a planned state highway expansion project that had not yet been publicly announced. If the highway project moved forward, the value of Richard's land could increase by tens of millions of dollars almost overnight. And somehow Richard had bought the property months before anyone else knew the project existed. The homeowners realized they might not simply be dealing with HOA corruption. They could be witnessing insider dealings on a massive scale. Emily Carter immediately sensed there was something even bigger hiding beneath the surface. As the meeting dissolved into chaos, she approached Daniel privately. She asked him one question. "Why bring this out now?" Daniel hesitated. Then he revealed something that made Emily's blood run cold. Richard Langston wasn't supposed to disappear. According to Daniel, he had planned to present all of this evidence to federal investigators 2 days earlier. Richard had agreed to cooperate after realizing multiple agencies were already looking into financial irregularities. A confidential interview had been scheduled. Richard never showed up. And nobody had seen him since. For the first time, Emily began to wonder whether Richard's disappearance was not an escape. Maybe someone wanted him gone. That night, Emily returned home unable to sleep. The more she reviewed the evidence, the less sense everything made. Richard had certainly benefited from the money trail. But some transactions pointed toward individuals whose names had never appeared publicly. Hidden accounts, anonymous transfers, offshore entities. There were signs that someone else had been controlling the operation from behind the scenes. Around midnight, Emily received an unexpected phone call. The number was blocked. When she answered, all she heard was heavy breathing. Then a man's voice whispered, "Stop looking into the lake." The line went dead. Emily immediately tried calling back, but the number could not be traced. The warning only increased her determination. The next morning, she drove to the community lake Karen had mentioned during the emergency meeting. On the surface, everything looked perfectly normal. Calm water, walking trails, families feeding ducks. Nothing suggested a structural emergency. Yet Emily noticed fresh tire tracks leading toward a restricted maintenance area near the far end of the shoreline. Curious, she followed them. Hidden behind a line of trees, she discovered something strange. A large section of ground appeared recently excavated. The soil was fresh. Construction barriers had been hastily placed around the area, and partially buried beneath loose dirt was a rusted metal object. Emily knelt down and brushed away the soil. It wasn't construction equipment, it was an old steel safe. Her heart started racing. Someone had buried it, and judging by the condition of the ground, it hadn't been there very long. Before she could investigate further, the sound of approaching engines echoed through the trees. Several black SUVs were speeding toward her location. Instinctively, Emily grabbed her phone, snapped a quick photo of the safe, and ran. The vehicle stopped only seconds after she disappeared into the woods. From behind the trees, Emily watched as 4 men jumped out and immediately surrounded the excavation site. One of them looked directly at the partially exposed safe. Then he shouted 2 words that sent chills down her spine. "Find it." Emily realized they weren't protecting the safe. They were searching for whatever was hidden inside it. And they were terrified someone else would find it first. Emily waited silently behind a dense cluster of trees as the men surrounded the excavation site. Their movements were fast, organized, and professional. These weren't ordinary construction workers. They searched the area with the urgency of people trying to recover something before anyone else could find it. One man carried a metal detector. Another appeared to be communicating through an earpiece. Within minutes, they had completely uncovered the rusted safe. Emily zoomed in with her phone camera. What happened next made no sense. The men opened the safe, then they looked at each other in complete shock. It was empty. One of them immediately slammed the safe door shut and began yelling. Another kicked the side of the metal box in frustration. Whatever they had expected to find was no longer there. The leader pulled out his phone and made a call. Emily could hear only a few words. "Someone got here first." The atmosphere instantly changed. The men were no longer searching for an object. Now they were searching for a person. Within seconds, they spread through the surrounding woods. Emily realized she had to leave immediately. She carefully backed away through the trees before reaching her car and driving home. But the image of the empty safe refused to leave her mind. If the safe had recently been buried and the men expected something valuable inside, then someone else had already discovered its contents. The question was who. Later that evening, Emily received an encrypted email from an anonymous sender. There was no message, only a single attachment, a photograph. Emily opened it. Her heart nearly stopped. The image showed Richard Langston standing beside the same steel safe only 3 nights earlier, but he wasn't alone. Standing next to him was a man whose face had been hidden from every HOA investigation, a man nobody in Willow Creek had ever heard of. The back of the photograph contained a handwritten note. "Follow the second signature." Emily immediately enlarged the image. The safe itself wasn't important. The photograph was. Richard was holding a document. Only a small corner of the paper was visible, yet one signature could still be seen, and it definitely did not belong to Richard Langston. Emily spent the next several hours comparing public records, HOA contracts, and property documents. Around 3:00 a.m., she finally found a match. The signature belonged to Victor Hale, a billionaire real estate developer. The discovery made Emily physically sick. Victor Hale wasn't just wealthy, he was one of the most powerful developers in the entire state. His companies had built luxury communities, shopping centers, office parks, and entire residential districts. He had connections to politicians, bankers, and investment groups worth billions of dollars. The HOA scandal had just become much bigger than Richard Langston. Far bigger. The next morning, Emily arranged a meeting with Daniel Brooks. When she showed him the photograph, his face immediately changed. He recognized Victor Hale instantly. Then Daniel revealed something he had never told anyone. Months earlier, while tracing HOA transactions, he discovered several large payments that disappeared into investment funds controlled by Hale's corporate network. At the time, he couldn't prove a connection. The transactions were hidden behind layers of legal entities and offshore accounts, but now the photograph changed everything. For the first time, they had visual evidence linking Richard Langston directly to Victor Hale. And if Victor Hale was involved, the money trail could extend far beyond Willow Creek Estates. Then Daniel revealed another disturbing fact. The land Richard purchased near the future highway wasn't actually intended for development, at least not officially. According to confidential planning documents, the land sat above something far more valuable, rare mineral deposits worth potentially hundreds of millions of dollars. Emily stared at him in disbelief. The entire HOA crisis suddenly looked different. The fake assessment fees, the missing funds, the buried safe, Richard's disappearance, the mysterious land purchase. Everything seemed connected to a single objective: control the land, no matter the cost. That afternoon, Emily visited the county records office searching for historical property files. Most of the documents were decades old. After several hours, she discovered a forgotten survey report from nearly 40 years earlier. What she read sent chills down her spine. The report mentioned underground geological formations beneath Willow Creek Estates and the surrounding region. Certain sections had been blacked out, officially redacted. Yet one paragraph remained visible. It referenced a confidential federal assessment conducted years earlier. The assessment warned that future mineral discoveries in the area could dramatically increase land values. Someone had known for decades. Suddenly, Emily's phone buzzed. A new message appeared. No sender, no number, only a photograph. It showed her standing inside the county records office less than 5 minutes earlier. Someone had been watching her. At the bottom of the image were 6 terrifying words. "You should have left this alone." Emily's hands started shaking. For the first time since the investigation began, she realized the people behind this operation weren't merely hiding financial crimes. They were actively monitoring anyone who got too close. And if they could track her movements in real time, then they already knew exactly where she was. As Emily slowly looked around the records office, she noticed a man sitting alone at the far end of the room. He was wearing sunglasses indoors and staring directly at her. The moment Emily noticed the man staring at her, a wave of unease swept through her body. The county records office was nearly empty. A few elderly researchers sat quietly reviewing documents. A clerk worked behind a distant counter, yet the man in sunglasses seemed completely focused on her. He wasn't reading, he wasn't searching records, he was simply watching. Emily forced herself to remain calm. She gathered her files, slipped them into a folder, and slowly walked toward the exit. The man never looked away. As she passed him, she caught a glimpse of a small tattoo near his wrist, a black triangle. Inside the triangle was a single silver line. The symbol meant nothing to her, at least not yet. The second she stepped outside, she headed for her car, but before she could unlock the door, a voice called from behind. "Miss Carter." Emily turned. The man from the records office stood several feet away, still wearing sunglasses, still expressionless. For a few seconds neither spoke, then the stranger handed her a business card. No company name. No address, only a phone number and a single sentence. "If you want to find Richard alive, call before midnight." The man turned and walked away. By the time Emily recovered from the shock and looked up again, he had vanished. That evening she met Daniel Brooks and showed him the card. Neither knew what to make of it. It could be a trap, or it could be the first real lead on Richard's disappearance. As midnight approached, Emily finally made her decision. At exactly 11:47 p.m. she dialed the number. The phone rang once, twice. Then someone answered, a woman's voice, calm, cold, professional. She spoke only one sentence. Drive to the old railroad tunnel outside Willow Creek. Come alone. The call disconnected. No explanation, no opportunity for questions. Emily knew she should contact the authorities, but instinct told her the opportunity might disappear if she did. An hour later, she arrived at the abandoned railroad tunnel hidden deep within the forest outside town. Fog drifted across the ground. The tunnel entrance looked abandoned for decades. Yet fresh tire tracks covered the dirt road leading toward it. Someone had been here recently. Emily grabbed a flashlight and entered. The darkness swallowed her almost immediately. Water dripped from the ceiling. Every sound echoed through the tunnel. Then she saw it. A faint light ahead. Someone was waiting. As she approached, the silhouette slowly came into focus. A woman stood beside an old wooden crate, mid-40s, dark coat, short black hair, no visible emotion. Without introducing herself, she slid a thick folder across the crate. Richard wasn't the mastermind, she said. Emily froze. The woman continued. Richard was the accountant. Emily's heart began pounding. Everything they had believed suddenly seemed uncertain. The woman explained that for years Richard managed financial operations connected to a much larger network. The HOA was only one of many communities being used. Similar schemes had allegedly operated across multiple states. Funds were redirected through shell corporations. Land values were manipulated. Property acquisitions were strategically coordinated. And at the center of everything was a hidden organization, not a company, not a government agency, a private network, a network known internally as the Meridian Group. Emily opened the folder. Inside were photographs, contracts, bank statements, maps and names, dozens of names, developers, attorneys, political consultants, investors. The amount of influence represented in those pages was staggering. Then Emily noticed something terrifying. One name appeared repeatedly, Victor Hale, the billionaire developer. His signature was everywhere, but another name appeared almost as frequently, a name Emily had never seen before. Eleanor Voss. The woman across the crate noticed her reaction. Eleanor built Meridian, she said. Emily asked where Eleanor was. The woman's expression darkened. Then she replied, nobody knows. Before Emily could ask another question, headlights suddenly illuminated the tunnel entrance. The woman immediately tensed. Someone was coming, fast. Several vehicles. The woman grabbed Emily's arm. They found us. Within seconds, multiple SUVs appeared outside the tunnel. Doors slammed, voices echoed, flashlights swept through the darkness. The woman shoved another object into Emily's hands, a small encrypted flash drive. Whatever happens, she whispered, don't let them get this. Then she ran deeper into the tunnel. Emily stood frozen. The approaching footsteps grew louder, closer, closer. Then a powerful flashlight beam struck her face. A voice echoed through the darkness, a voice she immediately recognized. Victor Hale, the billionaire himself, and he was smiling. Emily, he said calmly, we've been looking for you. For several seconds, neither Emily nor Victor Hale moved. The beam from Victor's flashlight remained fixed on her face while shadows danced across the walls of the tunnel. Around him stood nearly a dozen men in dark tactical clothing. Their expressions revealed nothing. They looked less like private security and more like a highly organized operation. Victor slowly stepped forward. Surprisingly, he didn't seem angry. He seemed amused. You're much more persistent than Richard was, he said. Emily tightened her grip on the flash drive hidden inside her pocket. Victor noticed. His smile widened. You have something that belongs to me. The tunnel fell silent. Emily knew she had only one advantage, time. The longer she kept Victor talking, the greater her chance of escape. What is Meridian? She asked. Victor laughed softly. People always ask the wrong question. He took another step closer. The real question is why Meridian exists. Victor explained that decades earlier, a group of powerful investors realized something most people ignored. Land created wealth. But information created empires. They began collecting information years before the public ever saw it. Future highways, future developments, future zoning changes, future industrial projects. Future resource discoveries. While ordinary people bought homes, Meridian bought the future. The organization quietly acquired land before values exploded. They influenced local boards, funded development projects, controlled key properties, and generated billions. Emily listened carefully. The story sounded unbelievable, yet every piece fit the evidence she had uncovered. The HOA had never been the goal. It had simply been a tool, a mechanism used to gain control over strategic land. Then Victor's expression suddenly changed. For the first time, he looked serious. Richard made a mistake. Emily remained silent. Victor continued. He started asking questions. The words echoed through the tunnel. Months earlier, Richard allegedly discovered that certain Meridian transactions involved far more money than he had been told. As he investigated deeper, he learned that millions of dollars were disappearing beyond even Meridian's official operations. Someone inside the organization was stealing from the organization itself. Richard threatened to expose everything, and shortly afterward, he disappeared. Emily felt her stomach tighten. For weeks, everyone assumed Richard had orchestrated the corruption. But what if he had become a liability instead? What happened to him? She asked. Victor's eyes narrowed. I was hoping you could tell me. The answer sounded genuine. For the first time, Emily realized Victor might actually be searching for Richard too. Suddenly, one of Victor's men rushed into the tunnel carrying a tablet. His face looked pale. Sir, we have a problem. Victor glanced at the screen. His expression instantly changed. The confidence disappeared. The smile vanished. For the first time all night, he looked worried. Very worried, Emily caught only a brief glimpse of the display. A photograph, a surveillance image, someone exiting an airport, someone who looked exactly like Richard Langston. The timestamp was only 2 hours old. Victor grabbed the tablet. Impossible, he whispered. Then another image appeared, Richard entering a black sedan. A second image. Richard meeting an unidentified woman. A third image. Richard carrying a large metal case. The same type of case often used to transport highly sensitive documents or large amounts of money. The entire tunnel erupted into activity. Victor immediately began issuing orders. Vehicles were mobilized. Phone calls were made. Teams were dispatched. Whatever Richard possessed, it was important enough to send the entire organization into panic. Amid the chaos, Victor momentarily forgot about Emily. That mistake changed everything. Emily quietly slipped deeper into the tunnel. No one noticed. She moved quickly through the darkness until the voices behind her faded. Several hundred yards later, she discovered something unexpected. An old maintenance chamber hidden behind a rusted steel door. Inside were dusty shelves, abandoned equipment, and decades-old utility records. But something else caught her attention. A modern laptop. Recently used, still powered on. Someone had been operating from this room very recently. Emily opened the screen. The desktop contained only one folder. Its name, Project Foundation. She clicked it. Hundreds of files appeared. Property acquisitions, financial transfers, political donations, internal communications, Meridian records. And one document highlighted in red, Emergency Protocol ELEANORVOSS. Emily opened it. What she read made her blood run cold. Eleanor Voss wasn't missing. She wasn't dead. She wasn't retired. According to the file, Eleanor had secretly controlled Meridian from the shadows for years. Officially, Victor Hale appeared to lead the organization. Unofficially, Victor answered to her. Everyone did, but the most shocking revelation came from the final paragraph. 3 weeks earlier, Eleanor Voss had ordered the immediate recovery of an item known only as the archive. No description, no explanation, only one warning. If the archive becomes public, Meridian will cease to exist. Emily stared at the screen. The archive. Whatever it was, it terrified some of the most powerful people in the country. Then her phone vibrated. An unknown message appeared. Only 6 words. Richard has the archive. Run! Before Emily could react, every light inside the maintenance room suddenly went dark. The laptop screen died. The tunnel became silent, completely silent. Then from somewhere beyond the steel door, she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, approaching her position, one step at a time. The footsteps continued. Slow, measured, deliberate. Each step echoed through the darkness of the maintenance chamber. Emily's pulse pounded in her ears. The laptop was dead. The lights were gone. Only the faint glow of her phone illuminated the room. Instinctively, she backed away from the steel door. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then came 3 slow knocks. The sound froze her in place. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Several seconds passed. Then a voice emerged from the darkness beyond the door. A familiar voice. A voice Emily never expected to hear again. Emily. Her eyes widened. Richard Langston, the former HOA president. The man everyone had been searching for, the man supposedly at the center of the entire scandal. He was alive. For a moment, Emily wondered if it was a trap, but then the voice spoke again. "We don't have much time." Emily cautiously approached the door. The moment she opened it, Richard stepped inside and immediately shut it behind him. He looked completely different from the polished businessman seen in old HOA meetings. His suit was dirty. His face showed exhaustion. His eyes revealed weeks of fear and sleepless nights. Most shocking of all, he looked like a man running for his life. Before Emily could ask a question, Richard pulled a rugged black hard drive from his backpack. "This is the archive." Emily stared at it, such an ordinary object, yet dozens of people seemed willing to risk everything for it. Richard explained that years earlier Meridian created a private intelligence database. Initially, it tracked property acquisitions and development opportunities. But over time, it evolved into something far more dangerous. The archive contained decades of secrets, political deals, corporate bribes, financial manipulation, blackmail operations. Hidden ownership structures, private communications, recorded meetings, evidence connecting some of the most influential people in the country, thousands of files, thousands of names. Enough information to destroy careers, corporations, and governments. Emily finally understood. The archive wasn't valuable because of money, it was valuable because of power. And whoever controlled it controlled everyone inside it. Richard revealed that several months earlier he accidentally gained access to restricted Meridian servers while auditing financial transactions. What he discovered horrified him. Meridian wasn't merely exploiting land investments. Certain members had allegedly manipulated public projects, influenced elections, and orchestrated financial collapses that affected entire communities. The HOA scandal was insignificant compared to what was hidden inside the archive. Then Richard revealed the most terrifying truth yet. Victor Hale wasn't trying to protect Meridian. Victor was trying to take control of it. According to Richard, Victor had secretly begun removing rivals from positions of influence. Financial records disappeared, key witnesses vanished. Entire companies were absorbed into Hale-controlled networks. The organization was eating itself alive, and Alina Voss knew it. That's why she ordered recovery of the archive, not to hide it. To stop Victor from obtaining it, Emily struggled to process everything. The conspiracy had become far larger than she ever imagined. Then Richard handed her a small folded photograph. The image showed a woman exiting a private helicopter, elegant, confident, older than expected. Richard pointed to her. Alina Voss. Emily looked closer. The photo had been taken only days earlier, so Alina was alive, very much alive. Richard nodded. "And she's coming." Before Emily could ask what that meant, a deafening explosion shook the tunnel. Dust fell from the ceiling, metal shelves crashed to the floor, the entire chamber trembled. Victor's people had found them. Richard immediately grabbed the archive. "No more running." Emily looked at him in disbelief. "What are you planning?" Richard stared at the hard drive, then he answered. "Finishing this." For the next several minutes, they moved through a network of forgotten maintenance passages beneath the old railroad system. According to Richard, these tunnels connected to a decommissioned transport facility abandoned decades earlier. Few people even knew it existed. As they approached the facility, another surprise awaited them. The woman from the tunnel meeting, the one who had given Emily the flash drive. She was alive, and she wasn't alone. Several heavily armed individuals stood beside her, not criminals, federal agents. Emily froze. The woman finally introduced herself. Special Agent Rebecca Torres, Federal Financial Crimes Division. For months, she had been working undercover inside Meridian. The flash drive Emily carried contained evidence collected during her operation, but Rebecca's next statement stunned everyone. "The operation is compromised." She pointed toward a series of incoming vehicle lights visible outside the facility. Victor Hale had arrived, and he wasn't alone. Dozens of vehicles surrounded the area, searchlights illuminated the darkness. The final confrontation had begun, then a helicopter appeared overhead, its spotlight swept across the facility. Everyone looked up. Painted on the side of the aircraft was a symbol Emily immediately recognized, a black triangle with a silver line through the center. The same symbol she had seen tattooed on the wrist of the man from the records office. The helicopter landed, its door opened, a woman stepped out, the entire area fell silent. Even Victor's people stopped moving, even the federal agents looked stunned. Eleanor Voss had arrived, and judging by the expressions around her, she was far more powerful than anyone imagined. The helicopter blades slowly came to a stop. Dust swirled across the abandoned facility as Eleanor Voss stepped onto the ground. For years she had existed only as a name buried inside confidential files. A shadow, a rumor, a ghost controlling one of the most powerful networks in the country. Now she stood only yards away. And nobody moved, not Victor Hale, not the federal agents, not even Richard Langston. The silence itself was unsettling. Eleanor calmly surveyed the scene, her eyes settled first on Victor. Then on Richard, finally on Emily. The woman appeared completely in control, as if she had expected every event that had led to this moment. Then she spoke. "Give me the archive." Her voice was calm, yet somehow more intimidating than shouting. Richard stepped forward. "No," the answer echoed across the facility. For a moment nobody reacted. Then Victor Hale laughed, a short, bitter laugh. "You still don't understand, Richard." Victor slowly walked toward the center of the standoff. The archive was never meant to survive. Emily immediately sensed something was wrong, very wrong. Victor wasn't acting like a man trying to recover information. He was acting like a man preparing to destroy it. Then Victor revealed the truth. Years ago, Meridian had created multiple copies of its intelligence database. Most were destroyed. Only one remained active. The archive Richard possessed wasn't merely evidence. It was the master key. A digital map connecting thousands of hidden assets, shell corporations, offshore accounts, and secret ownership structures around the world. Without it, Meridian's empire would collapse. With it, someone could seize control of everything. Billions of dollars, properties, influence, power. Suddenly Victor's actions throughout the investigation made perfect sense. He didn't want to protect Meridian, he wanted to inherit it. The archive was his path to becoming the most powerful figure inside the organization. But then Eleanor smiled, for the first time. And the smile terrified everyone, because it wasn't the smile of someone losing control. It was the smile of someone who already knew the outcome. "You think the archive matters," she said. Victor's confidence faltered slightly. Eleanor continued, "It doesn't." A strange look appeared on Richard's face, almost confusion, even he didn't understand. Then Eleanor revealed the secret she had hidden for decades. The archive was a distraction, a decoy, a safeguard. The real intelligence network existed somewhere else. Somewhere nobody had ever discovered. The archive contained enough information to destroy hundreds of people, but only a fraction of Meridian's true operations. Victor's face turned pale. For the first time all night, he looked genuinely afraid. "You lied to all of us." Eleanor nodded. "Of course I did." The words struck like a hammer. Years of ambition, years of planning. Years of betrayal, all built around incomplete information. Victor had spent years trying to seize control of something that wasn't actually the prize. Then a new voice interrupted. "Agent Rebecca Torres, enough!" Federal agents emerged from cover positions throughout the facility. Weapons raised, vehicles blocked every escape route. The operation was over. Or so everyone thought. Then chaos exploded. A gunshot echoed across the darkness. Nobody immediately knew who fired. A second shot followed, then a third. People dove for cover. Searchlights shattered, vehicles accelerated. The entire facility became a battlefield of confusion. Emily dropped behind a concrete barrier as bullets struck nearby metal structures. Victor's private security team exchanged fire with unknown attackers arriving from the eastern perimeter, but these attackers weren't federal agents, and they weren't Victor's people. Nobody recognized them, yet one thing was clear: they were after the archive. Someone else had entered the game, a third faction, a hidden player. Within minutes, the confrontation spiraled completely out of control. Then Emily saw something shocking. Eleanor Voss wasn't running, she wasn't hiding, she was walking directly toward the conflict. Completely calm, as if she knew exactly who had arrived. Suddenly, a black armored SUV crashed through a security barricade and stopped near the center of the facility. Its doors opened. Several heavily armed individuals emerged, then one final person stepped out. The entire area froze, even Eleanor stopped walking. Victor's face lost all color. Richard stared in disbelief. Emily couldn't understand why everyone looked so terrified, until Richard whispered the name, a name that should have been impossible, a name everyone believed was dead. Jonathan Mercer, the mysterious newcomer, slowly removed his sunglasses and smiled. 3 years earlier, Jonathan Mercer had officially died in a private plane crash over the Pacific Ocean. His death had been confirmed, investigated, closed, yet somehow he was standing here, alive, and judging from everyone's reaction, he wasn't merely alive, he was the original founder of Meridian. The man who built the entire organization before disappearing from history, and now he had returned. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The gunfire that had consumed the facility moments earlier seemed to fade into the background. Every eye was fixed on Jonathan Mercer, the dead man, the founder of Meridian. The ghost who had somehow returned. Jonathan slowly adjusted his suit and looked around the facility. His expression showed neither anger nor excitement, only disappointment. As if everyone present had failed some test, then his gaze settled on Eleanor Voss. The two exchanged a look that carried decades of history. Neither smiled, neither blinked. Neither appeared surprised. It was the look of two people who had once built an empire together, and later become enemies. "You should have stayed hidden," Eleanor finally said. Jonathan laughed. The sound echoed across the industrial yard. "I could say the same thing." Victor Hale stared at Jonathan in disbelief. Years earlier, Mercer had disappeared after a catastrophic plane crash. The wreckage had been found, bodies had been recovered, investigators had closed the case. Yet Jonathan stood before them completely alive. The explanation was even more shocking than his return. The plane crash had been staged, the bodies had been planted, the investigation had been manipulated. Jonathan Mercer had vanished intentionally, not to escape danger. To observe Meridian from the shadows. For 3 years he had secretly watched as Eleanor and Victor battled for control of the organization, and now he had come back for one reason: to reclaim what he believed belonged to him, the empire. Then Jonathan's attention shifted toward Richard, specifically toward the hard drive in Richard's hands, the archive. "Give it to me," Jonathan said calmly. Richard refused. Jonathan nodded as if he expected the answer. Then he looked directly at Emily and smiled. The smile sent a chill down her spine. "You still don't understand what you're holding." Emily immediately realized something. Everyone kept talking about the archive, but nobody had explained why so many powerful people feared it. Jonathan finally answered that question. The archive wasn't merely a collection of secrets. Hidden within its encrypted framework was access to something called the ledger, the real heart of Meridian. A secret financial system operating outside traditional banking structures. For decades, Meridian had quietly moved money through this system. Billions upon billions of dollars, invisible assets. Hidden investments, undisclosed ownership networks. The ledger controlled everything, and the archive contained the only access key. Suddenly, Eleanor's earlier statement made sense. The archive wasn't the prize itself, it was the doorway, the key, the mechanism that unlocked the true empire. Victor Hale looked furious. Richard looked horrified. Emily realized the situation had become far more dangerous than anyone imagined. Then another unexpected voice echoed across the facility, a voice coming through loudspeakers. Everyone looked upward. A large cargo drone hovered above the industrial yard. Attached beneath it was a high-powered communication system. The voice spoke clearly. "You're all looking in the wrong direction." The entire facility froze. Even Jonathan Mercer appeared surprised. The voice continued. "You spent decades fighting over Meridian." Pause. "You never noticed who was funding it." Silence consumed the yard. No one recognized the voice. Not Alina, not Jonathan, not Victor, not Richard, nobody. Then dozens of giant screens mounted throughout the abandoned facility suddenly activated. Surveillance monitors, old industrial displays, control room screens, every screen displayed the same image. A single symbol, a black circle inside it, a silver crown. Jonathan's expression instantly changed. For the first time since his arrival, he looked afraid, genuinely afraid. Alina looked equally stunned. Victor stepped backward. Richard whispered, "No." Emily had never seen such powerful people react this way. Whoever was behind the symbol terrified them. Then the unknown voice spoke again, a single sentence, the sentence that changed everything. "We created Meridian." The yard fell silent. The voice continued. "We financed Meridian." Pause. "We own Meridian." Another pause. "And tonight," the screens suddenly switched. Hundreds of confidential files appeared, photographs, transactions, communications, evidence. Every secret Meridian had spent decades protecting, every crime, every conspiracy, every hidden operation, all displayed publicly. Then came the final statement. "And the entire world is now watching." Across the facility, phones began ringing simultaneously. Federal agents, security personnel, Victor's people, everyone, news alerts, emergency broadcasts. International media notifications. The data was being released globally in real time. The archive had been activated, not by Richard, not by Victor, not by Alina, not by Jonathan. Someone else had already taken control, someone who had been operating behind all of them. Someone hidden above the organization itself, and judging by the terror on Jonathan Mercer's face, that someone was the most dangerous person in the entire story. The entire facility descended into chaos. Phones rang endlessly. News alerts flooded every screen. Around the world, journalists, investigators, regulators, and intelligence agencies were suddenly receiving pieces of Meridian's most guarded secrets. For decades, the organization had operated in the shadows. Now those shadows were collapsing, and nobody understood how. Jonathan Mercer stared at the giant screens displaying the black circle and silver crown symbol. His face had gone pale. The man who had manipulated governments, corporations, and billion-dollar projects for decades looked like someone who had just seen a ghost. Emily noticed something important. Jonathan wasn't afraid of being exposed, he was afraid of whoever had exposed him. There was a difference, a huge difference. The mysterious voice returned through the loudspeakers, calm, controlled. Almost emotionless. "You built an empire on information." Pause. "We built an empire on you." The words struck everyone like a hammer. Jonathan slowly shook his head. "No." For the first time, the founder of Meridian sounded defeated. Then Alina Voss spoke. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "The crown." Emily immediately looked toward her. Alina had spent the entire night appearing confident and prepared. Now she looked genuinely shaken. Emily stepped closer. "What is the crown?" For several seconds, Alina remained silent. Then she answered, "The people above us." The entire facility fell quiet. Even Victor Hale seemed stunned. Jonathan looked away. Richard froze. Agent Rebecca Torres listened carefully. Nobody interrupted. Alina explained that decades ago a small group of investors secretly financed the creation of Meridian. Officially, they remained anonymous. Even Meridian's leadership knew very little about them. They called themselves the Crown. Their identities were hidden. Their wealth was unimaginable. Their influence stretched across continents. And according to Alina, not even Jonathan Mercer had ever met all of them. The revelation stunned Emily. For years, everyone believed Jonathan was the architect of the empire. But he had merely been managing it. The true owners had remained invisible, watching, waiting, controlling events from the shadows. Then another screen activated. A live video feed appeared. Everyone looked up. A dark conference room came into view. A long table, several empty chairs, only one seat was occupied. the person's face remained hidden by shadows. The voice from the loudspeakers was coming from that room. At last, the mysterious figure spoke directly to those gathered at the facility. Jonathan, the founder, looked up. The hidden figure continued, "You were warned." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "You lied to me." The figure laughed softly. "No, pause. You simply believed what you wanted to believe." Emily watched carefully. The balance of power had completely shifted. The founder of Meridian was now being treated like an employee. Then came the biggest revelation of the night. The hidden figure announced that Meridian had never been the primary operation. It had only been one division, one branch, one experiment. The organization above it controlled countless other networks operating across different industries and countries. Meridian was simply the first one to become unstable. The first one to attract attention, the first one that needed to be dismantled. Victor Hale looked horrified. Everything he had sacrificed, everything he had planned, everything he had betrayed people for, it was insignificant compared to what existed beyond Meridian. Then the hidden figure turned attention toward Emily. The entire facility seemed to stop breathing. Emily Carter, her heart pounded. The figure somehow knew her name, knew exactly who she was. The voice continued. "You were never supposed to reach this point." Emily felt a chill run through her body. The figure wasn't speaking like a stranger. It was speaking like someone who had been monitoring her journey from the beginning. Then a photograph appeared on the giant screens. Emily gasped. It was a picture from 15 years earlier. A much younger version of herself standing beside her father. The image had never been public. Never. The hidden figure spoke again. "Your father came very close." Emily felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Her father had died years ago, officially from a traffic accident, a completely ordinary accident. At least that's what she had always believed. The hidden figure continued. "He discovered Meridian." Silence. "He discovered the crown." Another pause. "And that's why he died." Emily couldn't breathe. The facility vanished around her. The gunfire, the vehicles, the corruption, everything disappeared. Only those words remained. Her father had been murdered, not by accident, not by chance, murdered because he learned the truth. Tears filled her eyes, but before she could react, another image appeared on the screens. A document, an old investigation file, her father's name highlighted in red, and at the bottom of the report, one signature, the authorization approving the operation, the person responsible. The person who ordered it.